Now contrast that with a Christian reading of human nature. And I'm going to take this from the very familiar statements of Jesus. Love God with all of your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And I want to just point out that what that really amounts to is what I said earlier. The call of the human being is to love and serve others, and to love, be loved, and to be served by them. And the whole structure of human life is set up around that. The structure of community. I mentioned parent and child, caring for a child. It's often been said in recent years by Christians and others that the mark of a decent society is how the young and the old are treated. And see, in order to make that right, you have to understand that people are not just for use, because babies and old people are useless. And if that's the way you think about them, that's all you have to say about them, then of course their treatment will be like it often is in our own culture. If you understand the worth and dignity of a human being in relationship to God and the whole human community, then of course you have a different place to stand, both individually and in society, about how they're treated. And let's just say that if we take the teaching of Jesus, we will be given a list of the essential parts of the human being, and I've put them up here. I hope you can read them. Jesus said, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And that gives you a list. At the center of the human being is will, heart, or spirit. That's the capacity to make decisions. Human beings are creative beings. And that's true of every one of us here. And we want to create good. And that's built into a little child. And you watch a child, the first thing it wants to do is to make something. And before they can do things like put on their clothes and tie their shoes, let me do it. That's how they are. And that's a natural expression of creative will in the child. Everyone who comes through this life wants to leave the world a better place. Now, they may have become embittered and angry, but unless there are very peculiar circumstances, they want to be creative will, and they want to be creative of good. Now, in order to have a will, you have to have a mind. And in that mind, there has to be thoughts and feelings. Right? Because you can't make a choice unless you have feelings about that choice and thoughts about how it's to be done. You have to have those two things. And the mind contains your thoughts and your feelings. And it's a false abstraction that we live on, the idea that you can separate thoughts and feelings. You can't. They always come together. And I don't have time this evening to argue fine points in psychology. But they both belong in the mind, and that's what the mind is. It isn't just thoughts. It's thoughts and feelings, and both of those are required in order to be able to will. Anyone here tonight that doesn't have a will? Anyone here tonight that doesn't have a mind? See, mind and will are essential to human beings. Now, it's a good thing to have a body. That's essential for human beings. See, your body is your little power pack for life. It puts the capacity to act in your world, and without it you wouldn't have that. And at this stage in your existence, that's your source of power. Now, it's not your only one. It's one that you have, and God has given that to you, and you can even stand against God in the strength of your body. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. And because you have it, you insert yourself into the world, and you are inserted into the world. Your identity comes through your body. So in eternity, you will still be the son or daughter of certain people, because that's a part of your identity. And who we are is not something separate from the time and the place and the people that we're born in. History is of fundamental importance to human beings because it defines who they are and gives them the substance of their whole being. Social relations. No one stands alone. We live in relationship to others. That's a part of our being. That's a part of our nature. And finally, the soul. And the soul is the part of the person that puts all of the other parts together. If it's not a broken soul, it puts all of the other parts together: the will, the mind, the thoughts and feelings in the mind, the body, social relations, and makes one life. And you realize that there are many broken souls because not many people in our current condition manages to have a unified life. But ideally, that if we lived in circles of sufficiency that were unbroken and we're raised up in a harmonious way to know love and to be able to love, to gain knowledge, experience, grow, we would have souls that were unbroken. But our souls are broken because we live in a broken world where the circles of sufficiency have been violated, and we find ourselves crying out. We've lost loved ones. Terrible things have been done to us. And so that's the nature of the world we live in. Now then, God comes to us through our mind. And we respond to Him with our spirit. And He begins to pull us back towards wholeness. And the situation that is the common human situation that Paul expresses by the things I would like to do, I don't do. And the things that I would like not to do, I wind up doing. We are drawn out of that because our whole being is brought together in relationship to God, and we're able to be a whole person. So now the order proper to the human being is one that has all of these parts straight. Remember what I said? A nature is parts with properties that relate to one another in terms of those properties and produce a whole that is capable of relationships beyond the self. Now, the order proper to the human being is this: will subordinated to God. I'm not running my world. God is running my world. He's running the world anyway. I just come to terms to it, and I accept that. So the larger framework of things in which He has placed goodness, I serve, and I serve gladly. And I don't try to be God. See? I accept that. Will subordinated to God, my kingdom under God's, and therefore, at least in the process, because that's where all of us remain for a long time, and that's the way it works. In the process of harmonization of my neighbor's kingdoms and my own kingdom. Then the mind subordinate to spirit under God. Instead of running wild with imaginations of all kinds of things, order comes into my mind. I see things rightly, I understand things rightly, and I act in terms of them because also my feelings now are coherent with my thinking. Now, I realize that sketching this out in an ideal way may be kind of hard to take in. But just think of it as an ideal. This is a process, and the feelings are becoming more and more harmonious. I'm freed of contempt. I don't have contempt for people. I'm not full of anger. I'm not cultivating my lusting for my own entertainment. I'm not spending time envying people and dreaming about, I wish I had what they had. Right? Why not? Well, because I've become alive under God and I don't have to think those thoughts anymore. Right? I'm now alive in God's kingdom and I know that I'm taken care of. And so I can rejoice with those that rejoice. Instead of thinking, I wish I had what they had. I can think, I'm glad they've got it. And I can weep with those that weep because my compassion is not just for me but for them also. See, the restoration now begins to move through the body and through the social relationships. Mind subordinate to spirit under God, soul to mind under God, body to soul under God, and social relationships then harmonized with the body under God. Now this is a picture of human nature functioning well. So just take a moment to look at that. It's based on human nature. And out of this comes the norms which can guide us practically. I mean, you think of all the things that, if we have a list of things to do and not to do morally, think of what they're about. Well, they're about knowing and loving. See, if you murder someone, steal from them, lie to them, that's not exactly knowing and loving. That's living in a world where you feel like you have to lie. You may have heard of the little girl who in Sunday school was asked what a lie is, and she said, it's an abomination to God and a very present help in time of trouble. Well, you see, if you're running your world, you're going to need all the help you can get. And that's why, for example, very few of us come to the point where we decide, I'm done with lies. I will not mislead anyone. See? Now think if that actually happened in human life. Think of all the money and time we invest in protecting our goods. Think of a world where you didn't need locks. I was up in western New York talking someplace, and they said, we never lock our car doors except in summer, and we lock them to keep people from putting zucchinis in the back seat. Different world. Okay, so now we're living a spiritual life from God. The influx of God comes into our lives. We have given to us a life that is beyond ourselves, and that link to the kingdom of God is crucial to understanding human nature. You'll never understand human nature unless you understand that it is meant to be lived in a relationship of devotion and worship and love to God. And when you are looking for a way to distinguish human beings from other animals, always remember worship, devotion, dedication, and love to God. And that life flows into us, and it produces activity that we're not capable of on our own. And the Great Commandment then is fulfilled in real life. We can become whole persons, the parts in proper order and function, by living a life of worship and service to God and others in a power beyond ourselves. The Great Commandment is basic knowledge of how to live well and be a good person. And once you understand the nature of the human being, then you can see why that is true. There are no realistic alternatives to that. We have set that aside as knowledge, but we have not replaced it with a better view or even a significant alternative to this view of what it is like to be a whole person. And when we begin to experience it, we begin to see the beauty and strength of it as it begins to enter our personal relationships and restore them and transform our whole world. Now, we do want to say, as we come to complete this discussion, that this is not by will alone. It is not something that can be done just by human strength. It has to be touched by the grace of God as the life of God moves inward and gives us inward transformation. And this is the place of spiritual disciplines. Spiritual disciplines are not designed to remedy behavior. They're designed to transform the inward person. Solitude and silence, fasting, scripture memorization, service to others. There's no complete list, really. A spiritual discipline is something you do to enable yourself to do what you can't do by direct effort. The secret of spiritual discipline is indirection. It doesn't try to correct behavior. It changes the inner person. We don't want to become people who do the right thing. That's a trap. That'll kill you. We want to become the kind of person who does the right thing routinely and easily. And that's what it means to have the life of God coming into the person through the mind and the spirit, and then transformation takes place. The aim is to become in all dimensions of the self the kind of person who naturally and easily does what is good and what is right. You'll remember the words of Shakespeare, the quality of mercy is not strained. That's true of all virtues. It is the person who does easily the thing that is right, who has had the inward transformation that makes life whole. Now, moral life must be based on knowledge. We cannot hang it in the void. We cannot base it on good feeling or political action of various kinds. The human self is meant to act in terms of what it believes. And that's why it's important for us to talk about human nature and to understand what it is. Because only if we have beliefs about it that lead us to understand what it is good for, can we use it rightly. I go back to the opening of my remarks where I said, understanding human nature or the nature of anything is what enables us to know when it is excellent in its character, to know what's good for it, to establish norms for its guidance. It must be based on knowledge. We will have beliefs about what is real, and the task is to ensure that they are true beliefs. And you can be sure that if you believe that human nature does not exist, you will have no norms to guide your life. The secular mind drove the spirit out of reality, any reality it could accept, and because of that, it is incapable of establishing moral norms. And since the moral life is a matter of the spirit is the will and the character, it is inevitable that moral knowledge would disappear in our culture. And here we need to tip our hat to Nietzsche and say a good word for him, because what Nietzsche understood was, if you take the Christian foundations out from a culture, it will collapse. And that's what he was so excited about. He was incapable of giving an alternative. And I'm just saying here this evening, and perhaps you'll want to quarrel with that, and that's fine. There are no alternatives. And it's in the nature of human nature that there should not be any alternatives. But he saw what was happening, and he realized that it was a complete disaster. Revelation is the source that we have to look for knowledge. Let's just make a simple statement about the Bible. I know there are many things that could be said about it, but you have to understand that the Bible is the best information on the most important topics that human beings have. Now, you would guess what I mean by the most important topics by what I've already said already. But among other things, of course, that would be human nature. The Bible is a tradition. It contains deep teachings. It is set up in such a way that if you're looking for what is wrong, you'll find it. The medieval thinkers used to say that if a jackass looks into a mirror, he does not see an apostle looking out. That's true, isn't it? And if you look in the Bible, really what you're going to see is you looking out. And I don't mean to put you in the category of the jackass. But it's a very instructive figure, and actually is used in the Bible, as some of you will know, looking into it as a mirror. And we want to be able to see ourselves and see ourselves for who we are, and that will always bring us to God, and it will always show us the right way to go, if that's what we're looking for. If we're looking for puzzles, we'll find plenty of them. If you want to sit up nights and worry about where Cain got his wife, be my guest. But we want to remember that this is the most vital knowledge, the best knowledge on the most important topics. Now, you can compare that to any writer that you wish. And there are many other good writers, I don't mean to deny that. But this is the source. It just happens to be, that's the way it is. I believe God has planned it that way. And if we look to the Scriptures in that way, we will find the guidance we need. And the need now is for those who believe this to present the way of Christ as knowledge and reality and as a picture of human nature. We need to put this in clear juxtaposition to all of the other teachings that are around us. In order to do that, we don't have to be arrogant and closed-minded any more than one who knows how to fix plumbing has to be arrogant and closed-minded about what they're doing. They can be open. They can listen. We want to be in the same spirit. And that is the spirit of the university as it has been traditionally conceived. And we want to live in that spirit. And when we do, we will find that we have a treasure of moral knowledge. The way of Christ contains the body of moral knowledge for which the world is dying. And keep in mind from last night what knowledge is now. We need to practice that knowledge, openly and honestly test it and present it. And in this way, make our assemblies of Christians the guiding light of humanity on the university campus, everywhere in life. including education and all of culture. Human nature as it should be is not the responsibility or possibility of the university at present. They do not deal with it because they cannot deal with it. We are the ones who have to stand up in such a way and lead our lives so that people will realize there's something better in life than they had ever dreamed. I want to close with a quotation from a Harvard professor named George Palmer, and he delivered a series of lectures in the field of ethics at Harvard in 1899, and here's what he said in concluding. He quoted a large number of people as to what ethics is about, and then he says, "Ethics is certainly the study of how life may be full and rich, not as often imagined how it may be restrained and meager." Those words of Jesus, announcing that he had come in order that men might have life and have it abundantly, are the clearest statement of the purposes of both morality and of religion, of righteousness on earth and in heaven. Thank you. Thank you very much.